Don't pardon the fact that I sound like complete ass. Phil Anselmo wouldn't do that. He wouldn't pardon me. In fact, he'd say go fucking harder. We're going to talk about Phil today, though, because he's got a new solo album that comes out. It actually drops tomorrow, which God only knows what fucking day that is. The last 3 days have been a blur to me, because I've been pretty fucking sick. Phil Anselmo, or Philip H. Anselmo, and the Illegals with Walking Through Exits Only. This is his debut solo release, which almost seems to be kind of, impossible considering he's been in 72 different bands. No, not literally 72, but it feels that way at this particular juncture. I mean, this guy has been literally just everywhere over the past couple of decades. Of course, most people remember him from Pantera, from that legendary act. Of course, other people probably remember him more recently from a band called Down, perhaps also Superjoint Ritual, perhaps Arson Anthem, and a couple of others. He's done some stuff with Warbeast, Split earlier this year. And now he has his own act, Philip H. Anselmo, and the Illegals. Apparently the H stands for Hanson, and no, we ain't talking about Bop. So, this is an album that has been kind of defined as groove sludge metal. And whenever I think of these words, I think of Pantera, I think of Crowbar. I think of Pantera and Crowbar put together to make Panbar or Crotera. Both of those names are pretty fucking cool, so this album is probably going to be pretty fucking sick. Well, it's definitely sick, I'll tell you that. Phil has certainly pulled zero punches on this. In fact, he has just gone balls to the wall out with his lyrical concepts on this record. And not to mention the musical concept by itself sound like it is something that they perhaps recorded normally and then just allowed it to kind of degrade a little bit and decay using some nice fancy technology, or just by soaking it in a swamp for a couple of hours. This is dirty, muddy, murky freaking material. And a lot of people who really like Pantera will definitely hear a little bit of the subtle tones of Pantera in there, but it's going to be buried so far deep amid the muck of this musical album that it's going to be very difficult to really pinpoint anything that sounds tremendously and overtly familiar. You start off with Music Media Is My Whore, which is under 2 minutes long, and whenever you think of that, you think maybe this is just going to be an intro, but nope. Phil is basically preaching to the choir on this little short track, and he is preaching quite a good bit. This is actually an album that is filled with a ton of lyricism, and it's one of those things where it sounds, whenever you hear the lyrics kind of combined with the music and the pacing and the tone and everything like that, it actually sounds like these songs are longer than what they actually are. Battalion of Zero is only 4 minutes and 20 seconds. I know that's ironic, but it actually sounds like it's about 6 or 7 minutes. And that's just simply because he's, getting a lot of points out there, for one, and for two, the musical pace is to the extent where it just doesn't really move along very quickly. And with this particular song, the one concept that really kind of bogs me down, at least, is the hands up, hands down part that is repeated a number of times on this album, or on this song. But I'm really not going to harp on that too much. I mean, let's face it, this is something that is meant to be Phil's pet project, so you can't overtly criticize too much on that. Now, as you can continue to move on through Usurper's Bastard Rant, Walk Through Exits Only, the self-titled song, Bedroom Destroyer, and then Bedwritten. I mean, it doesn't let up. It really doesn't. It's pulverizing, it's uncompromising, and it's very raw. That's the one thing that I will say really satisfies this album, and really, is very satisfactory about it, is the fact that it's extremely raw. You wouldn't expect Phil to really release something that's very, very polished, that's exceptionally, pristine. You would want something from Phil that's dirty, that is in your face, that is like being in a fight. And being in a fight in a swamp. And that's essentially what this is. The really interesting part whenever you first load this up is whenever you see irrelevant walls and computer screens. Because it's 12 minutes and 1 second whenever you see it in your media player, and essentially this is one of those tracks where you have lyrics for the first couple of minutes, probably for about the first 4 or 5, and then everything just sort of is allowed to degrade. And it's almost like this is something where whenever they were in the studio, they just opted to have this continue in a very chaotic way, in a very, unscripted way, and they just kind of let everything subtly move down and kind of create a little bit of an atmosphere of just destruction an atmosphere of raw undoing. And it actually works very, very well in this case. This is an album that for some people, the first time they listen to it, it may be a struggle. If you love Phil a lot, it won't be. But if you're just kind of a casual fan, if you liked Pantera more for Dime, or if you liked Down more for Pepper Keenan, I'm not really sure why you would, but just in case that is the reason, this could be an album that takes a couple listens for it to finally expose itself to you, and it might at first seem relatively unlistenable. Phil's vocals are so raw at this juncture on this release that for some people this will be absolutely unlistenable. However, there's a lot of turmoil. I really like the amount of unforgiving emotion in this. I really like the fact that Phil just seems to be uncompromising. And I really like the fact that Phil, like I said, he holds nothing back. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is an Album of the Year candidate, don't get me wrong. I still think this is about a 7 to a 7.5 out of 10. But by no means is this going to be a simple album for people to get into, but at the same time, it's by no means a poor album. It's in fact very well crafted. The raw and uncompromising nature of it is really the most positive thing that I can speak about this. Because it's everything that I expected from Phil, but only it was taken one step further by the way in which it was produced, and the way in which the sounds kind of come together. That was the surprise. In the era of the sound wars and the loudness wars, Phil basically allowed his vocals and a very raw, murky production really take control. Now, it's a loud son of a bitch, don't get me wrong, but it's loud in the right ways. It's not wall of sound loud. It's just something that just pulverizes your eardrums. All things that you'd expect from Phil. Phil, if you're watching this video, I don't know why you are, because I'm just some peon. Good job. I like this record. And I hope that I will be selling a good number of it tomorrow. Coverkiller Nation, fans, friends, I also want to thank you guys for being respectful towards me, not to mention also for being willing to kind of deal with me over the past couple of weeks. I, of course, wrote the blog about everything that has gone on, and now I've got sick, so thank you for sticking by the Coverkiller Nation channel and by me, and stick by this music right here. Stick by Phil. It's good stuff. I'll see you later.